Hey readers, welcome back. My name is Eddy Hood and this is the Read Well podcast. Now in my Yale class this week, we've been talking about this personal torment. So what causes it? Why are we unhappy at times and so on? When I was 9 years old, my best friend introduced me to, well, let's just call them inappropriate magazines. His father had stacks of them all over the house. And today we're going to talk about how those affected my life. We're going to apply what I've learned this week in my Yale philosophy course about controlling our passions and our appetites. And as always, I'll leave you with a book recommendation to keep you thinking. All right, let's get philosophical. So recently I made a video about how I stepped away from the LDS church, and this is a beautiful building. This is one of their temples. Here, as a member of the church, one of the things that actually appealed to me, again, because my friend's family had all these magazines everywhere and it was just disgusting. The church appealed to me because of their stance against that kind of material. And so I entered this organization and spent the past 30 years of my life just constantly trying to think to myself, like, be good, be good, be good. Don't fall off the cart, don't fall off the cart. And by thinking that way, I was so focused on Plato's multi-headed beast that I never gave time for my own reasoning ability to begin thinking what I considered important and what was interesting and valuable to me. So anyway, we'll get into that, but that's why I stepped away. In the Republic, Plato has a few ideas that can help the tormented soul. Here's his concept, right? A well-ordered soul is a happy soul. That's the first idea. The second idea is that a well-ordered soul functions like a well-ordered city. Okay, so what does it mean to be well-ordered? And why are we comparing ourselves to cities? We're going to watch a video in just a second. We're going to be looking at part of the lecture that Ms. Gendler shares in the Yale lecture series. It's about 4 minutes long, but it's going to walk you through Plato's imagery and why he compares you to a city. It's really, really powerful. And you're going to love the graphics in this. It's really, really fun. Okay, let's jump into that now.
So the story goes as follows. Plato's trying to tell us what the human soul is like. And in honor of the weather, we'll represent the human being like this. And he points out, as I've just noted that the human soul has three parts. It's got a rational part, it's got a spirited part, and it's got a part that is full of appetites, appetitive.
Okay, so we're going to pause for just a second. The idea of trying to understand the human soul is a very core concept in philosophy. Since the beginning of time, humans have been trying to understand why we feel conflicted. Why is it that at times we feel motivated and other times it's sad? Why do we sometimes not do what is best for us, even though we know we should? This is the division of the soul. And Plato, in his book, is dividing your soul into three parts, which she is depicting in this picture. And as she mentioned, the first part, she's got it as a snowman because it's winter time at the time of filming. But the top part, there's a purple guy, and that is your reason. That is your brain. That is the part of you that is logical. Then below that, you have the lion, which is your spirit. And your spirit is the good part of you. It's the honorable part that wants to set goals and be a better parent and learn new things and clean up after yourself, all those things. But then down below, the base function of you, and notice it's at the base, it's sort of always there, it's always present. This is what Plato calls the multi-headed beast. It is the thing that rages within you, that creates your passions, your temptations, and yes, we all have them. So whether it's a shopping addiction, whether you, anything, right? Pick the multi-headed beast, you know what yours is. Let's see what Plato has to say here.
Appetitive. And you can see the human being, the lion, and the multi-headed beast in Plato's famous image there. But in order to understand what is good for the human being, Socrates suggests at the end of the discussion in Book 2, which we read for last class, that the best way to understand what it is that's good for the tripartite human being is to think about what would be good for a city that is structured in the same way. What societal structures can help us understand things about the internal structures of human beings?
So in order to understand your soul and the way you function as a human being, sometimes it's better to not look at a small version of the problem, but a much larger version of the problem, because when things are blown up, it's easier to see their parts in connection with each other. And so Plato, of course, Plato is the one writing the Republic, but he is describing a conversation happening between Socrates and some other people. And so Socrates is the one that's actually making this argument that in order to better understand your soul, we should look at how a city functions, because a city has similar needs. It has a need for reason and logic. It has a need to be honorable and to have strength and courage and defense. And it also has a need to deal with the base functions of life. So let's look at what he says.
So he proposes the famous city-state analogy, whereby corresponding to the part of the soul that he calls appetite are citizens of the city that he calls workers, or people who do the day-to-day work of the city and who take their joy and pleasure from the pleasures of the body and of the appetites. There are soldiers, those who defend the city and serve as its defenders in military contexts who are motivated by honor. And there are, in addition, philosophers or guardians, those who live the life of the mind. And you'll notice who gets.
So I want to point out here that I'm presenting this lecture to you not because I fully believe everything that is being taught, but because I want you to understand Plato's argument for what he believes is the division of our souls. I think it's an interesting argument to sort of break apart. So whether you agree with Plato or not, it's important that you ask yourself if you do. But his argument is that a city is made up of these three kinds of people: the everyday workers, and then you've got to have a military component, and then you've got to have some sort of leadership at the top. And in the Republic, Plato argues that the best form of political leadership will not be those hungry for power and for prestige, but instead should be the unwilling philosopher, essentially, somebody who has spent his or her time thinking critically about hard things and has become wise, but doesn't want the job of being the politician. That, in Plato's mind, is the perfect person to be leading the government or the organization of society. So that's what this is here.
And you'll notice who gets to end up at the top in this story. So the idea is that in order to understand the four cardinal Greek virtues in the context of the individual.
So we're going to hit pause here for just a minute. She used the term four cardinal Greek virtues. If you've studied Stoicism at all, these virtues will sound very familiar to you because they are in fact the same. The Stoics always promoted four virtues as a way of living the happy and flourishing lifestyle. They were wisdom, courage, temperance, or discipline is maybe the better way to put it, self-discipline, and then justice. So we're going to go through each of these four, and the thumbnail for today's video is around these four virtues, because I think Stoicism really gets a lot of attention today because we are hungry for having these four virtues in our life. We really want to be more wise. We want to have more courage in our lives. We would love to be more disciplined, and we would absolutely benefit from a little more justice, as these people describe it. So we'll get into that.
Of the individual, we will be helped by thinking about where those virtues can be found in the city. And we can then map what it is that we've learned from looking at the problem writ large in the context of society. We can map that onto what would be the case in the context of the problem writ small, the individual.
So again, it's best to understand yourself, a small entity, by looking at a much larger, similar structured entity, which is the city.
So Plato Socrates points out that there are four cardinal virtues, and you know these from your reading. The first of these is wisdom. And the wisdom of the city and of the individual is to be found in its rational part.
Okay, so we're going to stop for a moment and talk about wisdom. What does it mean to have wisdom in your life? I think for me here at the Read Well podcast, I'm always promoting the idea of reading slowly, taking notes, and applying the ideas. I really think that most people crave for that sort of connection with their minds. We are just learning at a rampant pace. We are constantly bringing data in, and we don't have the time in between all of our articles we're reading and our blog posts and our videos that we're watching. It's such a great example. At the end of this video, YouTube is going to feed you another video before you've had time to even think about it. So in order to be truly wise, hit pause after the end of the video and write down your thoughts about what Plato taught and decide whether you agree with him or not. That's how you become better. That's how you become more wise.
There is courage, and the courage of a city or of an individual is to be found in its spirited part.
Okay, courage is important. And again, Plato is likening your honor and your spirit and your determinism to the city's version, which is the military branch, there to protect and preserve. And the idea here is that to be courageous, you need to know what is dangerous. And once you know that, you need to have the guts to sort of stand up against it. In Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, he really digs into the concept of these virtues, especially in book number 2. And you could spend your whole life figuring this out. But what Aristotle argues, and I agree with him, is that a virtue is trapped in between two extremes. So if you look at the virtue of being courageous, Aristotle would say that at the very far end of both sides of courage, you've got complete cowardice and overconfidence, right? So both cowardice and overconfidence, or being pompous, those are vices. Those are things that are not going to make you better and are not going to improve your life. But the very middle part of that, the right and smack dab in the middle, is courage. And that's where you find your virtue in life. You can do this with almost any of the virtues, whether it's being honest or whether it's being thrifty with your finances, whatever it is. There's going to be an extreme on both sides. And Aristotle would say you need to be in the middle if you're going to be virtuous. I bring that up here with courage because courage is such a valuable virtue to have, but it's important that we understand what courage means. It does not mean you go out and do reckless things and be overly bombastic. And it also means that you need to have more guts than the guy in the corner cowering who's not willing to take charge of life.
And then there are two virtues, the distinction between which is important in some contexts but not for ours. And those are the virtues of moderation and justice.
Okay, so we're going to hit pause here and be done watching the video, the lecture, but I want to point out what both moderation and justice mean. So for Plato, moderation really is about controlling the appetites. It's about allowing yourself to not be consumed by the things of the world that are pleasurable. And so this is interesting because Aristotle in Nicomachean Ethics asks this question. He says, if I were to live a life of complete pleasure, would that lead to happiness? And the answer is no. If you did everything your body told you to do, although it would feel good and it would be probably interesting for a minute, you would not be happy because that is a slavish life. In other words, you become a slave to the thing that you're obsessed with, and there's really no way to get away from that. So pleasure as your main objective is not a good thing. You will be living in complete disaster. So that's where moderation comes in. You need to be able to moderate yourself. You need to be honest with yourself and really know where you stand in these ideas. And justice is a little different. When we think about justice, we think of a gavel-swinging judge or an attorney and living according to the law. While it is that, there is a more nuanced answer here to what justice is. Plato says that justice is when people in the city or the different parts of your soul are doing what they are designed to do. So if you have a specific work within the city, let's say you're a carpenter or a plumber or an attorney, right? That is what you are best at, that is your skill set, and you should fulfill that to the best of your ability. And also in doing that, you should leave other people alone. In other words, stay out of everybody's business. And by staying out of their business, You're not going to be stealing their goods or hurting them or making them feel awful about themselves. You're leaving people to do what they do while you do what you do. This is justice. So I love this concept because, my goodness, if we could all just do that, if we could all just let each other be, how much better would the world be? As always, I'd like to give you a book recommendation, and it is time to do so. So I am in love with John Cagg's writing, and I found his book, Hiking with Nietzsche, in a local bookstore. I couldn't put the thing down. In fact, I actually read it twice this week. So Cagg teaches philosophy at the University of Massachusetts Lowell and is the author of several books. He takes you here through a memoir of his experience hiking in the Swiss Alps to better understand the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. And through that ordeal, he presents some of Nietzsche's more complicated ideas like the revaluation of values, eternal recurrence, and the Übermensch without sort of drowning you in all of that impossible jargon. So this book is really fantastic. It's a fantastic introduction, not only to Nietzsche and his work, but also to philosophy in general. I highly recommend it. So Hiking with Nietzsche by John Cagg. One of the reasons why I love to read books is because human beings are herd animals, right? We enjoy being a part of the herd. There's safety there. We don't have to think too hard. We can just benefit from the sheer massive numbers, right? But when you read a book, it allows you to, at minimum, see a different part of the herd. And at times, if the book is good enough, it allows you to step outside of the herd and to see this bigger picture. It really is like unplugging from the matrix for a minute and realizing that you are being influenced by lots of different ideas and people and things. That's normal. I think it's just critical that you are aware of who's doing the influencing and that you are fully informed and you're giving consent to be influenced. And I think in life we have these, again, churches, religions, people who will create these big, beautiful buildings and share their messages with such authority that we just kind of go along with it because we want to be a part of the herd. And those decisions to accept those worldviews will change our lives. Sometimes for the better, but sometimes for the worse. And it's really important to be aware that it's happening. That's why I like to read books. Hey, if you like this week's discussion regarding my experience growing up and learning the four virtues, take a quick second to pop over to thereadwellpodcast.com and subscribe to my newsletter. Each week I put together a hand-picked selection of tools and insights and book recommendations to improve your reading experience. Every word is written by me with care. No artificial intelligence is included. It drives me nuts that everybody's writing with AI right now. I put a lot of energy into that newsletter. I deeply care about it, and I send that out once a week, every Wednesday. So thanks for watching, and until next week, remember to read slowly, take notes, and apply the ideas. I'll see you guys next time.